What's going on, everyone? So, at the end of season 3, we learned that the Nkui children were sacrificed by the monsters of the town for immortality, right? And that Tabitha and Jade, the Nkui girl that kneeled before Tabitha, was their child that they tried to save her and all the children, but ended up failing. And they have been destined now to keep living this life over and over and over again until they are able to finally solve the puzzle. And this adaptation of this current Jade and Tabitha has come the farthest, right? They have all this new information and details that we're going to explore in the upcoming season 4. But we also learned that these monsters can't die and that they sacrifice their children in order to live forever in this Fromville and be able to be these monsters. And kind of makes you wonder, like, why would you want to turn yourself into a monster? Immortality, sure, I get, but to become a monster, especially sacrificing your children. But nonetheless, right, there is this clear just framework for Fromville. Well, you have the boy in white. And the boy in white is obviously a boy who is aging, which I think is interesting. We'll kind of look into explore that more. However, the boy in white is very different from the Nkui children, right? He seems different. He appears different, right? He's able to communicate and, kind of pick and choose and seems to have this knowledge and abilities of this place more than anyone else, right? More than any of the Nkui children, any of the monsters, nothing, right? And he kind of gets to operate and has even helped and saved several people in Fromville. But begs the question of, like, okay, well, how did the boy in white become this spirit or entity or mirage, whatever he is? Most likely, my guess is that it's a spirit, because we've seen all these spirits from the Nkui children to obviously the Kimono lady, right? And is Martin a spirit, right? So there is clearly that. And the boy in white has this, has made these connections with Ethan as well as Victor. And, they have these ties to Miranda and Tabitha, and, very likely even they could be reincarnated versions, or Ethan couldn't be the reincarnated version of Victor, but Victor could have been the reincarnated version, or maybe just like this pattern, right? Maybe they're not necessarily the reincarnated versions, but maybe they're the, reoccurring versions, right? Like Miranda had 2 children. Tabitha had 2 children. I know she had Thomas, but he ended up dying at the time they got to Fromville. She only had the 2 children, right? So it could be something like that. I am, obviously this is just a theory, an idea, but I'm pretty confident that we're going to find out that the boy in white is connected to the man in yellow one way or another. But also, I wouldn't be shocked if the boy in white was sacrificed by the man in yellow and was the child of him, maybe even. And maybe that's why, because like I've talked about, the painting you see, the man in yellow is not old, right? I mean, he's older, obviously. He's, probably in his 40s, 50s in that painting. Did a whole video breakdown of that. But now you see the man in yellow and he is old, right? Like, looks like he's in his 70s. Well, the boy in white went from like a little 6, 7-year-old kid to, what is he here? 12, 11, somewhere around that age, right? So I would imagine that maybe there is some type of connection to that, and why the man in yellow and the boy in white has been, aging. But it would also make sense that you, again, continuously have these patterns and these trends in Fromville. Well, it had to have started somewhere. And maybe that forest or whatever, the land, whatever, was this ancient land that was just, the settlers or whatever came across or came, and you ended up needing to have a sacrifice to kind of, get in power. And maybe the man in yellow sacrificed the boy in white to gain power. And just like we saw the Nkui children, it's very different. However, man in yellow, he's the big boss, right? Or he's supposed to be. He's the big bad. So it would make sense that, his child would be very different than the Nkui children, because he's very different than the monsters that were there. Also, if somebody told you, hey, if you sacrifice your children, I can give you power and immortality, you're just going to take them at their word? Or are you going to need to see like that proof? I mean, I hope you're not sane enough to not not do that regardless, but you get the point, right? Like, if you were going to do something like that, you're not just going to take some stranger at face value. But if they're like, I already did this, I already sacrificed my child, and now I have this power and I have this ability, right? And I can, I have strength and immortality and all these things, right? Like, you could have what I have too if you were to do the same, and it would make sense that, okay, people see it. Okay, they sacrificed the boy in white, man in yellow's kid. Look at him now. Okay, if we do the same, we can be like him. All right, and it would also make sense why he would be different than the monsters, right? Like, think of, Dracula and vampire stuff, right? Like, a lot of depictions of it is that, Dracula has certain abilities that none of the other vampires have, none of the other ones that he turns, right? And so it would make sense that, the man in yellow would be able to not be affected by the sunlight, or, maybe the talismans don't work on him and stuff. Like, some of these things that we see with the monsters, if he was the first, and he was the first sort of monster turned in Fromville, it would make sense that he would kind of have these gifts, powers, and abilities that no other monster would have. And in doing so, sacrificed his child. I think that makes a lot of sense. Again, I think that there's going to be some type of connection, clearly, to the man in yellow and the boy in white. And I've covered a couple ideas, and I'll definitely cover a few more. I have like a whole list of different potentials and possibilities of how the boy in white and man in yellow are connected. I mean, they could even essentially be the same entity, right? And, you see, like, the boy in white, presents as a child, innocence, right? Pure, kind. He's wearing white, which, again, ties in all of that. And then you got the man in yellow, the king in yellow, right? Very Lovecraftian, right? Type thing. Old, evil, wicked type, right? Like, it's just, you have these clear indicators that, okay, bad, good. And it would make sense, though, that this pattern that there is would have always been, right? And, there has to have been that first. There has to be the first one that, established that place or created that place. And it's like, how do you do that? Well, if children being sacrificed is the way to do so, well, then guess what? That's probably how it started, right? Like, all these children needed to be sacrificed for these monsters to have immortality in this place to stay afloat and all that stuff. Well, that's probably how it began. Probably began with a child being sacrificed, the boy in white. And it would make sense why he has this knowledge and this information and knows, because he was probably there, right? Probably had this idea. He was very pure. He was very innocent. He wasn't planning on it. And he was what appeared to be around the age of the Ankui children and all that stuff, right? Like, none of the Ankui children look to be in their, like, 15 or anything. They're all kids, right? So it would make sense that the boy in white was the first. And he's kind of trying to undo or help undo what his father did, what the man in yellow did, right? And it's kind of the old tale of, father versus son. And maybe you see some showdown at some point, right? Maybe the man in yellow goes and tries to, take out Ethan or Victor or something, and the boy in white shows up and is like, no, I'm not going to let you do that, right? Like, I think that there's going to be some type of dynamic that we're going to see with these two. And I'm very curious to see how it plays out. But again, just an idea, just a thought. But I really do think that that's probably the most realistic idea, right? Like, I wouldn't be shocked if that's one of those things that, because I've had a couple where I'm like, hey, what about this idea? And it turned out to be like, oh, no, that's actually the direction they go. This kind of feels like one of those things to me personally. Obviously, again, I don't know. Just my thoughts. But, hey, it would be kind of interesting in my opinion. But as always, this is a discussion. Pass question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you like this idea? Do you think yes, the man in yellow sacrifices the boy in white, just like the Nkui children were sacrificed by their parents, right? It's the following the pattern, the trend. Do you think, no, you got to go a different route, be more creative than that? However you feel, whatever your thoughts are. Either way, I would love to hear it. So let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. So we enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one.